Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Berdinsky, and somewhere on that split screen is Republican Town Councilor and Vice Chair of the Wallingford Town Council, Tom Laffin. Tom, very recently, you made a motion at the end of the night, a motion that didn't appear on the printed agenda, to find some money, to transfer some money from the contingency fund. I think it was 10 grand. To hire a sound engineer, and it had something to do with data centers. What's going on? What do you need a sound engineer for? And what does Wallingford have to do with data centers?
So after last night's special meeting, or during last night's special meeting, we also learned about data centers coming to Wallingford. Data centers, it's something that I've been talking to people for the past 10 years of my entire time on the council. There are tech companies in Wallingford that I have talked to and worked with and connected them to the Economic Development Commission, Tim Ryan. And I won't say who they are just because I didn't talk to them first about this part here. And for whatever reason, those didn't work, mostly because Connecticut was not a desirable place to build data centers. Wallingford was not the issue, it was Connecticut. So recently, the state legislature enacted an agreement where these data centers were exempt from paying taxes like that to draw them in. And I don't think it's just my opinion. I think Wallingford is the most desirable location in Connecticut for those, maybe even in a large part of the Northeast. Just because of our location to 91, 95, we're dead center between in a triangle of Boston, New York, and our electric department is so strong. We're featured on the news a couple of years ago for major outages across New England, and Wallingford still had all of its power. So that's what they need. They need power in space.
Before we get into that, and we're going to get some detail, paint me a picture, paint me a visual of what a data center looks like on the outside.
Yeah.
And maybe what I would find if I got on the inside.
So data center is probably a building, they vary, but let's say a building the size of a Costco or BJ's, just filled with computers that not a lot of people need to work at or go to or visit, just thousands of hard drives, servers, computers, and the cooling systems necessary to keep those machines running. And again, like I said, they vary in size. And in the presentation last night, the guy from GotSpace LLC that's looking to develop these data centers in Wallingford said that they are better looking than a Costco. I don't know yet or how, but
great.
Great. So I don't know why you would make a data center a fancy looking building, maybe just for the neighbors if it's in their backyard, that side of the building. I don't know, but yeah. So it's basically just a giant warehouse filled with computers, and they set about 2 stories tall, 35 feet. And that's the gist of that.
So the presentation on May 18, that was last night because we're producing this on a Wednesday late afternoon. The representative from GotSpace, who seemed very knowledgeable about this, this subject, and of course, what struck me first is how expensive these data centers are. I mean, they're talking about investments of $2 million, $4 million, $6 million for a data center. Some of that is real estate construction. Some of that is the equipment that has to go in, very high-end, high-tech stuff. I think he said that they rotate the equipment inside like every 3 years because the technology is changing so very, very much. And because it's so valuable, this is a high security site. When you build this Costco-like building, they don't want anyone coming in and sabotaging it, because that's really disaster. That means the cloud goes down, I gather. So they have, he didn't mention Doberman Pinschers. He didn't mention German Shepherds. He did not mention that. He did not mention razor wire. He did mention fencing.
He can't give away all of his secrets because that would be a security breach. He's got to keep the people guessing. It's not until you're inside. Once you get past the retina scans and the blood tests and all that, then you find the Doberman Pinscher.
Right, yeah.
It's got to be a surprise.
And maybe Craig Fishbein in a foul mood. I don't know on either side of the fence.
He'll be watching from his perch across the street. Yeah.
But infrared technology, so that if in the dark someone tries to creep up and cause damage, the infrared sensors will pick that up. To get into the building, they said there was like a biotechnology, which would mean a fingerprint or maybe an eye print. I don't know, that I see in the movies. So
Yeah.
it's very secure, but they don't need to be lit up because the security depends not on lights but on infrared. But they make noise. So talk to me about why and what you do about it and the consequences of that.
So there's a lot of HVAC, and there are generators. There are backup generators, because if there is a power loss, then the generators need to run, and those would be diesel generators, because I guess natural gas isn't as reliable or whatever. But it's mostly these HVAC units that they say that the way that they construct the building and where they locate them, it shields a lot of that to keep it cool.
Yeah. So I want to recap how we got to where we are first. Apparently,
Sure.
After this legislation, or around the time this legislation was passed in Hartford, that gave data centers serious tax breaks, sales tax, and local property tax, but it was a comprehensive tax exemption program in Hartford. This particular company started looking at Connecticut, and Wallingford in particular, as a location to site some data centers. And I guess I gather a couple months ago, maybe more, they started talking sort of behind the scenes, behind closed doors with the town of Wallingford to see if it was possible to site a data center or two within Wallingford, because it's, as you say, location is there. Fiber optics are nearby. We have our own electric division, which gives Wallingford residents, businesses, and residents lower electric rates.
Yep.
And they were able, and this was pretty amazing, they were able to find contiguous parcels of land, cobble together parcels that made it over 100 acres, 100 to 130 acres, I believe, based on his comments, all done very quietly. They needed this big piece of land for just technical reasons. And now they want to move forward with this plan to have data centers in Wallingford, possibly, if they can.
Possibly, right.
Yeah, if they can crunch the numbers and if they can get the Wallingford Town Council to agree to a host agreement. And a host agreement is what? Because this is something that's big on their minds, on the administration's minds.
Yeah, because they don't have to pay taxes, because the state told them they don't have to. And that's why they're here. The host agreement would cover things like how much are they going to contribute to the town of Wallingford for being here. Basically, what are they going to pay instead of taxes to be here? I mean, that's the bottom line. So
if they didn't have this deal from the state of Connecticut, and they just put in $400 million worth of investment, and let's say the parcels were worth 400 million, you run that by the mill rate, and it's like 11 to 12 million dollars in taxes.
Yeah.
It wouldn't pay them to do it. So that's why the legislature says, no, we got to get rid of these local property taxes, and you guys negotiate something else.
Yeah, because something's better than nothing. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So the town council met in executive session and decided that it needed a sound consultant. Let's go back to that, and then we'll pick up on some of the other details.
Sure.
Why? What are we worried about?
Worried about it's going to be loud. Then and these are, and I think you have some maps. Some came up in the meeting last night, and I've seen maps. There are some of them are near houses and homes and neighborhoods, and there's a concern. We're burned. The council, the town, we feel a little. Our burns are still healing from the Thurston Food area. Neighbors complaining about sound, and the Oakdale neighbors complaining about sound. So we want to try and stay ahead of it as best as we can right now.
Okay. Let's put up some maps. This is a rendition prepared by Got Space, this company that has its eye on Wallingford for data centers. The yellow blocks are potential buildings that would house computers and networking equipment. There's 5 of them. And GotSpace has deals with all the property owners in this shaded area. I'm running the cursor, generally speaking, around the perimeter, and it comes out on North Farms Road. These buildings over here at Tankwood is to the north, and to the east is North Farms Road. And all these properties were cobbled together by GotSpace, hoping that they could come to terms with the town of Wallingford and that GotSpace could attract customers who needed data storage facilities. Yeah.
Right.
The roadway that GotSpace is proposing, a new road, comes off of North Farms and goes through the back of the property and leads to the various buildings. 2 stories, a little more than 35 feet. They say it'll be as pleasant and attractive as they can possibly make it, cutting as few trees, putting in buffers, things like that. Tom, did the representative from GotSpace seem accommodating genuinely to the neighbors, or was he just a salesman?
Well, he's definitely a salesman, but I think he was a little, I don't know, he might have been a little put, I don't want to say put back, put on edge. He's on guard. He said he was eager to accommodate or help work towards the concerns of the neighbors. And they were very strongly spoken. So he's right to do that. And there was specific talk about one building in particular, I think it was number 5, that was more of a concern than the others because of its proximity to homes. So he said they were going to go back and that those maps would change, and those aren't even, those aren't like full-blown engineering maps or anything like that. But then now with that information, they would go back and make adjustments and proposals and see if there's a better way to use the land.
There's another map that I want to get up. This is another proposed location where GotSpace would like to site a data center. Where the cursor's wiggling around is a Hilton Garden Inn off of Route 68. Research Parkway runs off to the top of the slide. Williams Road comes down to the eastern border, and you got two big buildings with a road off of Williams. So we got 2 locations that GotSpace has been able to make deals on. They haven't bought the property yet, but if everything comes together, I guess they will.
Yep.
Is it your understanding that all of these things are going to be developed? That there'll be 2 here, 5 in that North Farms location? I mean, how's this going to work?
So they've promised nothing, right? These are just potential locations. These are, I think they're being built largely on kind of speculation at this point. The need or the demand rising. So right now even if we agree to this within the next several months, it could take quite some time for the first one to pop up, let alone all 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever there are.
So look, we have possible noise problems.
Yep.
We have some neighbors in some of the neighborhoods for the first time possibly seeing a big building they never saw before. There may be some impact on traffic, but these are not big traffic generators, but still there'd be some additional traffic. In that North Farms area, there's going to be another warehouse unrelated to the data centers that is going to be developed by a guy called Orsini. It's off of Northrop Road. And there's going to be some sort of a medical center on Route 68 near where the hotels are.
Yep.
this area, is beginning to develop potentially quite quickly.
Possible Amazon site where Bristol Myers was.
Possible Amazon site about a mile away.
Yep.
So if everything comes to pass, things could change. Some neighbors are concerned. What's in it for Wallingford? Specifically, what's in it for Wallingford? What do they get out of it?
Well, a couple things, but the large piece is that payment in lieu of taxes.
Let's put a
Whatever
number
that-
on it. I mean, let's,
Right.
how much are we,
Well, that's what executive sessions are for, right? I'm not supposed to, we're still negotiating or hearing about all that stuff. But based on what other towns that they're looking to put data centers in, for a large one, you could be looking at $1 million. Let's use that for $1 million for those large ones on the first map, $500,000 for the second one. I don't know. That adds up. That's just straight up like new money we weren't getting that amount of money for the farmland or the woods behind the Hilton Garden Hotel. And the people of Wallingford own our own electric department. They would become hands down the number one consumer of electricity in Wallingford. I mean, the Wallingford Electric Division would need to upgrade systems and build new things to accommodate these. That is where we get that's where the town gets a lot of our capital non-recurring funds every year. That would go up too. I mean, it's just maybe our rates would stabilize or go down. And there's a lot of things.
so there was some discussion on Tuesday night, again, that's May 18, as to whether or not the town would have to make any investments to accommodate the data centers if they go in. And the investments that was of concern would the town have to pay for water? Would the town have to pay for sewer? Would the electric division have to pay for its own efforts to bring power to the site?
Yeah.
What do we know about those potential expenses for the town?
I know the water sewer stuff, they kind of got to handle upgrades. That part of that is, I think that's part of the negotiation ultimately with electric division, the town, the host agreement, all this other stuff.
What does that mean?
On promise, or
the town may have to pay?
may have to pay, may have to front, may be reimbursed, may be part of the agreement. That's all the stuff that'll be worked out.
Yeah. All right. And what about the electric division? Do they have to pay to upgrade their wiring?
Yeah, and I mean that's the part of stuff that's what we got to find out. I'm trying to not say too much based on. I'm trying to not mix my meetings together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm going to help you out here.
Sure.
We're going to vote 2-0 to go into executive session, just like you did, and we're going to discuss stuff that you discussed, but you shouldn't have discussed. It should have been in public. So we're going to do it now. We're going to discuss in public what should have been discussed in public, and that is GotSpace has a couple of deals already. That's public information. You discussed it privately, but it's public information. And how they structured those deals may be a useful benchmark, maybe not, but it may be a useful benchmark in judging the kind of offer they make to Wallingford. The one I have so far is the town of Groton. The town of Groton has an agreement that each building, and we saw on those maps I put up 7 buildings, 5 off of North Farms and 2 off of Williams. For each building, Groton's going to get $1 million, plus an escalator of 2% per year, unless the cost of living goes up to 3%, and then it's 3%, and then it's capped. And that deal could go on for 30 years.
Right, 20, 30 years, whatever.
Yeah, it goes for a long, long time. So first, I guess, how does $1 million per building sound to you 30 years from now? I mean, does it, with the escalators, does that sound like they're getting away with murder? They're getting away too cheap. Did Groton give it away?
Inflation in 30 years, I don't know. Right now it sounds amazing. For the foreseeable future, it sounds great. I think this is a lot of we would look back in 5 to 7 years and say, Bristol Myers, what? We lost a chunk of our annual revenue in town when they closed up and left.
Yeah.
And this makes that look like nothing if all of these or even half of these buildings were built. So
if I wanted to ask a town council or a public official, so what's in it for Wallingford? I know they wouldn't want to answer because, well, we talk about that in executive session. But then a member of the public would say, yeah, but we learned on the Citizen Mike show, Groton's getting $1 million per building plus an escalator. Is Wallingford going to do as good? And they'll panic. They'll say, oh, I can't talk about that. We talked about it in executive session. So, and the way I understand the process, I hope I'm not confusing the viewers too much. GotSpace wants to lock down as a first step an agreement with the town, a host agreement, which would lock in the fees and the other things that you were talking about. What improvements might Wallingford have to make, or would the developer pay for all of these water, sewer, electrical improvements?
Right.
Those sort of details. Maybe the town council or the administration would lock down issues such as noise and aesthetics and buffers. I don't know. They may leave that to planning and zoning. But that's what they want to happen next. They want the town council to agree, and then they'll move forward with their next step of development. So that's the basics. Craig Fishbein had an idea that maybe they should make public architectural renderings of what the buildings look like before you guys vote. I thought, that's a pretty good idea. I don't know why they would want to do that, but that's a pretty good idea. I think that's fair. Tell me your thoughts on what I just.
Yeah, no, I mean, the more information, the better from our standpoint. I mean,
Yeah.
I know their argument will probably be, well, we can't tell you, we can't show this because of security reasons or whatever. But the more information we have, obviously the better, so that because if they're looking for a long-term agreement, then we need to make the best decision we can.
Yeah.
And certainly not rush into it. You keep joking, you're not joking about the executive session stuff. I know at one point we go in to talk about the basics of a deal and, is there interest, and people ask questions. What do we come out and answer a question and come back? I don't know. I think there is a fair natural evolution to discussion. But we want to get as much information as we can, because this could be a very, very, very lucrative deal for Wallingford that other towns cannot or will not receive. Like you said, they are talking to other towns and municipalities too. But again, I believe unbiasedly, I'm convinced that Wallingford is the best location for them. Not that they won't also use the other towns, but we have an opportunity and we want to take it. And we're talking about years and decades of tax relief, or not having to raise taxes, or not having to raise taxes as much to accommodate as we grow.
So so much has happened behind closed doors, and the locations that have been scoped out by GotSpace, the developer, were not publicly released, and probably no one would have known about it had not Ed Bradley, during a May 18th, during that meeting, had mentioned, this property off of Williams Road. I think probably the Citizen Mike show is the first time a map was put up showing, for the general public in Wallingford, showing the location of these. No one publicly, even though it deserves to be in public, that Groton is getting $1 million per building. No one reviewed publicly the statutory scheme that allows these companies to come in tax exempt, pretty much. So I'm just wondering now, will things become more public, or will there be another general information session, do you think? Or will, as what was stated on Tuesday night, the administration continue to negotiate, determine what an agreement's going to be, present it to you wrapped up in a bow, in a take it or leave it, up or down vote, and that'll be the end of your role? Your thoughts on the process? What would you like to see? Yeah.
What I'd like to see, what I expect to see, is that all the informational meetings can now proceed completely open out in the public as an evolution off of last night's meeting. Any executive session we would have at this point, I think, would be on the numbers that would come, so that we can discuss that back and forth freely. And I assume that would go, I would expect that to go the same as our other executive sessions go when we talk about contracts. where the counselors express what they're comfortable with, what they look for. They share some sort of strategy to offering X versus Y. And the administration then goes knowing how much support or how much support they do not have to proceed. But I think that the numbers, I think, would start an executive session before we come out with a contract for the actual host agreement. But all the other stuff I expect now to be out in the public. And that's why that motion we talked about with the sound consultant, I mean, that came out of an executive session. It was a waiver rule 5, means that it was added in after the agenda was set in, on a meeting on a Wednesday or whatever. And for time purposes, usually we have a waiver rule 5 if there's no opposition, and keep things moving. And coming out of that, there was I made the motion, but I often make a lot of the just general who cares motions anyway. But we brought up, we talked about it. What is the wording of this motion going to be? Because not everybody is just, yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
And people raise concerns over the secretiveness of, if you look at the way the agenda item was written, we could have legally made a motion that basically just said that. And that wasn't, people weren't comfortable with it. And there might have been a majority that said, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway. But that wasn't it. Everybody wanted to. So we crafted that. That was crafted. And we talked to our attorneys in the town to see what we could say.
I want to go back to a recap based on what I heard on May 18, and that was Tuesday night. And what the developer is saying, and if his attorney, Len Fasano, showed up as the developer's attorney.
Surprise.
Good choice in Wallingford, right? Yeah, local boy. What they were saying, what they were stressing was, we want this host agreement. And after that, and we're going to be as flexible and as accommodating to residents. They say that, well, before you sign off.
Before they sign,
of course, we're going to be as flexible as we can be, putting everyone's fears at rest. But they want to stress that the legislation allows for a lot of local control. And they were pointing at planning and zoning, and they were saying, traffic, that's planning and zoning, setbacks, planning and zoning, position of the buildings, planning and zoning, cutting you guys out. And so unless there's something surprising in the host agreement besides the money, planning and zoning is going to have the responsibility for protecting the interests of the neighbors, and the big one is going to be noise. And the heat's going to be on them, and they kind of want to fast track this. So the way I see it, again, a summary for our viewers, the negotiations with GotSpace will be wrapped up. There may or may not be another general informational hearing. It'll be presented to you for an up or down vote. The numbers will be made. The host fees, like Groton has $1 million per building, will be popped to the public for the very first time. There won't be a chance for anyone to research it, look at it, consider it. You guys will have known about it in executive session. The public will have been in the dark. You vote up or down, and then it's going over to planning and zoning, and they do their magic on it. Is that a reasonably accurate characterization of what at least some people think is going to happen in the future?
Well, that's an accurate representation of what some people, including you, will think. I think it will be different than that, and it would be advantageous. I know GotSpace, of course, they're a developer. They want to move as fast as possible through all the hurdles, especially the government pieces. And I say government versus land use boards, like that's a whole different hurdle.
Yeah.
They want to move it as fast as they can and button it up. But it would be advantageous if they really desire to be in Wallingford, and I believe it's worth it to be in Wallingford.
Yeah.
To go along with the process and slow it down a little bit, because it's not just a spike or a slam dunk like they say. It could be great. It could be really good. But we've got to do it the right way. And there's, we're burned. We're burned from the sound stuff of the other developments.
Move on to I want to talk about the veto, but I just want to leave this thought, and you're going to have the last word on it, because Wallingford is so much more desirable than Groton. So much more desirable.
So much more.
So much more. The people
we have Neil's Donuts.
What's that?
We have Neil's Donuts.
You have Neil's Donuts.
Yeah.
it's so much better. Wallingford deserves so much more than what Groton got, which is $1 million per building. So much more. And we have the Citizen Mike show, which of course, Groton doesn't have anything like that.
No.
So I would
But they
expect,
watch it in Groton. They can watch it on YouTube.
we're going to make sure they do.
They should.
So I'm expecting some big numbers to come out of this. Before we move on to the budget and the veto and who voted what and why, any final thoughts on got space?
No, and I've been wondering as we're talking, the strategy of negotiating almost a full deal with another town first that becomes public record so that it can be used as a reference here. So it's, do we get more, or is it, well, we'll just go there instead, because it's going to be, I know that's part, somebody sat in a room and decided these are the towns we're going to hit in what order, second choice versus first choice versus third and fourth backups, or future growth, buildings 12 through 15. I don't know.
Let's talk about the budget. For the second year in a row, the council overturned the mayor's veto by a vote of 7-2. I think things have changed with respect to the mayor's leadership. He was not able for 2 years in a row to put through a budget he wanted. A bipartisan coalition forming a critical mass of 7 votes were able to overrule the mayor and effectively reducing the mill rate, reducing the taxes on voters. Mayor wanted a higher tax bill. Council wanted a lower tax bill. You and Chairman Vinnie Cervoni were the two that sided with the mayor. I think we both were expecting the mayor's veto to stand by a 6-3 vote. It takes 7 to override. We thought it would only be 6 to override. We were bantering on the last show about how Craig Fishbein would vote. And he surprised us both, right?
Correct. Surprised us both.
Walk us through.
He and I always, people kept, all week are bringing it up. Before the veto even happened, we were just talking about it's going to happen, and then it happened all weekend. And I said, no, he's very consistently voted against any, or against or for, depending on what was necessary, on anything that would provide a larger tax bill to a citizen of Wallingford, for better or for worse. And so part of that, we had 1 year, it was a near zero. The state money came in higher than we expected, and we were able to go back and adjust our mill rate. And it came out to be not a zero, but close to zero, because we rushed it, frankly. I wanted to wait and do the math correctly, but we rushed it. And he couldn't bring himself to vote for that either, because there was some sort of increase. So I predicted that he would not. And then the whole meeting, even, I felt like his comments were preparing everybody to understand why there were a couple reasons why he wasn't comfortable with the budget. And then he passed on the first round in a garbled
During a roll call vote, he would normally go first.
Who normally go first.
But I think you're saying he wanted to count the votes to make sure his vote mattered.
Right. Oh, wow. I didn't know. Yeah, well, sure. No, I'm sure. Maybe. I think jokingly or not, he complains about having to vote first all the time. I would gladly vote for, my mind is usually, it's made up. I've never, how's this going to go? I got to switch. Clearly, I've been the out guy on a lot of stuff, so I don't even know how they keep me around sometimes,
right.
But so I don't know. He passed on the first round and hesitated, and then voted yes.
And when he found that he would be the 7th vote,
he was the 7th vote.
He voted to overturn the veto. Well, okay. So I was reminded about an article that I wrote in July of 2020. I shared a little bit of this with you before we went on camera, but I wrote this editorial in the Record Journal commenting on how I thought Mayor Dickinson was losing his grip, his leadership skills. If people aren't paying attention to him, or if enough people aren't paying attention to him when it comes to the budget, this isn't the leadership that I would hope for. But here's what I wrote back in July 2020. The bipartisan vote 7-2 by the Wallingford Town Council that froze the mill rate and overturned the mayor's veto of the town's new budget marks the end of the Dickinson era, ERA. Strong words. I want him to be strong. It seems like he's not the same guy, not the same leader that he was when he was in his prime and in his heyday. During that era, Mayor William W. Dickinson Jr. was persuasive. He could influence enough councilors so he could get what he wanted. He wouldn't lose important votes. He, but mostly his likable staffers speaking on his behalf, had plausible arguments for his decisions. And aided by the strong mayor form of town charter, all matters were under the mayor's tight control. Whether he was right or whether he was wrong, he was invincible, but no longer. I gather you disagree.
Yeah. So in the past 10 years that I've been on the council, and I was involved before that, and then I was on the board of ed before that, and I was just even involved in town politics service stuff before that. I never felt he was invincible. He certainly never approached me that way. There certainly are or were other politicians before us and me that acted like they were or he was. So I think it didn't work out. The charter is very strong towards the mayor. He did not have a support of the council, as it was pointed out in the meeting. This is by design how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And if 7 councilors so choose it, so it goes.
Yeah.
Now what's interesting, because of that charter implementation, what we learned a little bit last year is that he still has to execute the budget. He still has to implement it and use it. It's totally within his control to not spend another $1.5 million that he didn't feel needed to come or be budgeted out of the reserve fund, the general fund. So it's very possible that we see $1.5 million in cuts, or he watches it closely as it goes. I don't know, but
nothing wrong with that.
Last year nothing wrong with it. Yeah. I talked about this on another show, and I referenced it in one of the meetings too. One of my ideas, I brought it up multiple years, is if we're going to cut spending, let's cut $900,000 or $1 million, 2/3 of it from the Board of Ed side, the rest of it from the general government side. So it's because that's how the budget's made up. And let's actually decide as a council what we're not going to spend. And I guess this is an indirect way of putting that on the mayor, and whether he can decide whether to spend it or not. The Board of Ed budget, he can't do anything with the Board of Ed budget.
No, that's gone.
So that's gone. We gave them an increase on surplusing budget surplus over $1 million, more than a second year in a row. They have more federal money coming in.
I think
they've got money, and nobody else wanted to. Nobody likes to cut the Board of Ed money. And okay.
So, in the course of a budget process, which begins in April and ends on May 18, in this particular year, it would be useful for the council and the public to know how we're doing this year, right? It would be useful to know whether or not we're running a deficit, whether or not we're running a surplus, and if the mayor had said, "Boys and girls, this year we are going to be running a deficit. Don't go any deeper into reserves because we're going to be taking it out of reserves this year because of the deficit." And I think that would have had an impact if he was able to say that. Of course, he didn't say that. He wasn't asked, but even if he was asked, he would not give an answer. That has been his practice. If he had said, I see you want to take more out of reserves. It's kind of harmless this year because we're running a surplus. I'm making the number up. We're running a surplus of 2.5 million. So I'm not upset by you drawing down on reserve by 1.5 because we're doing well this year. That would have had an impact too. It just seems that he is letting us down, not doing all he could do, not be the mayor he should be, by refusing to let us know what he certainly knows. And that is, are we running a surplus right now, or are we running a deficit? If you had your way, would the mayor share with you the status of the town's finances?
Yes, but he doesn't. And we've asked. So you're right. You said no. Nobody asked this year.
Given up. Given up.
Everybody. People ask other years. People ask throughout the year.
Yeah.
And we get a, a monthly, spending report or whatever. It's not quite the same, and there's a lot of like font 8 detail there. No, and so it would impact my decision, obviously, and but that's not what he does, and we don't
How'd you
have
feel?
any sort of right. We don't have any sort of level or control to do anything about it. Um, I think he more or less he factors that in. You said he must know, and
He does.
I would hope
He does.
he knows. So he factors that into how much he decides is going to come out of the reserve already, which maybe is why he gets so adamant about not doing anything more, because he's
Well,
already kind of
I'm
picked his
telling you,
number.
I
But
find that, I find that if that's what's going on, the mayor knows, he won't say. And if it's a serious problem, like he knows we're running a big deficit, he just won't share it. I find that reprehensible. I really do. I find
and
that
yeah,
dereliction of duty.
and that reaches the next point I jotted down here is it would appear to me, because it has been this way for the entire 10 years that I've been on the council, and anything I can remember before that as well, so at least another 5 to 10 after that. It sounds like he's got like probably trust issues. I don't know, at some point 40 years ago, first year or two in, he shares the numbers and they get used against him or thrown in his face when it doesn't exactly work out that way.
He got
He
burnt.
will not give the he will not give those numbers until it is done, 100% audited, done.
So,
No indication beforehand, and he's consistent. It's not a variable, it's
yeah.
a constant, and the charter doesn't give us the ability to alter that. It makes it a constant,
So,
and his resiliency, whether, and sometimes you have to look back on the years that we spent 1.5 million or whatever. He must have known, but he and the years that we were surplusing, he must have known, but he just keeps his answer consistent. No, I'm not going to tell the audit.
so other chief executives from the governor on down to other towns, they're not afraid to share how, on what track the town is on financially. They're not afraid to share the information that, yeah, looks like we're running a surplus, looks like we're running a deficit.
Yeah.
And back in the day when I was on the council, and this is going back many, many years, but Jim Bowes was a comptroller. I would ask him in the budget process, off the record, how's it looking? And what do you think the results are going to be? And he would say, hey, within $200,000 or $300,000, it looks like we're running a surplus of this amount or a deficit of that amount. So certainly if the comptroller is able to do it, and you wouldn't want a comptroller who couldn't do it, that's what financial control is all about. So any comptroller worth his salt knows how to make those projections. That's their job. It's just a policy matter that the mayor doesn't want to share that. So you guys are kind of shooting blind, and it's very unfair. And I think you should be informed, and I hope the next mayor or town manager, better choice, or town manager will share that information.
Well, there will definitely be at least one mayor before there is a town manager.
That's
I will bet you whatever amount of dinners and whatever you want on that.
all right.
But no, so they're within a range, what you said, 300,000.
Yeah, he give a range.
I mean, it gets tight. The 1.5 million
Yep.
that was motioned to be additional revenue off the unassigned fund is that's 0.85% of the budget. I mean, we're talking really thin numbers, razor thin.
So in his veto message, 3 paragraphs, the mayor said, now is not the time, I'm reading from his letter, now is not the time to potentially reduce our credit reserve. And let me just pause there. I think that's a scare tactic. There's no chance that this budget is going to reduce the credit rating. There's absolutely no chance of that.
You don't think there's no chance?
Zero.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
What do I get if it happens? What do I get?
Whatever
None.
you want.
I don't think there's no chance. I mean, I want to be optimistic and say there's little chance.
There's no chance.
No chance.
Now is not the time to potentially reduce our credit rating reserve to a number of less than 10% of our budget. Okay. So that 10% of our budget, I don't know quite where he gets that. And but I want to put up a slide and read you something from Moody's and refer to another Moody's report. is I think he's misusing, or misrepresenting, or misquoting what he thinks the credit rating agencies want. This is the last audited, these are the last audited numbers that we have. Fund balance 28,574,000 up here in the upper left corner. And it's comprised largely of the unassigned fund balance, 16 million plus.
Yep.
The assigned fund balance, which is assigned to cover the budgeted expenses, 7.4 million.
Which is now
Board of Ed has-
7.9.
What's that?
Which is now 7.9, right?
So,
That's the
yes,
first thing.
yep. Board of Ed has its 2% fund that they can use for any reason whatsoever. Appropriations in force is to cover operations that you couldn't get to in one year and you decide to defer them for the next. So to cover operations, you got a lot of money in here. 16.2 plus 7.4, most of the 3.7. So that's the state of the general fund balance. Let's see what Moody has to say about that. And this is from a major publication that they put out a few years ago. For those that like to cite, oh, the unassigned fund balance is the only thing we could look at. Not true. So I'm saying when Jim Bowes, whatever he says, well, they like to look at the unassigned fund balance only, not true. He has no basis for that. He's got a truthiness problem, or he misunderstands what Moody says. Here's what Moody says. The input, this fund balance describes the net financial resources available to an entity in the short term. The input for this factor isn't simply general fund balance. No. Not simply general fund balance. We include all reserves like the cap and non-recurring, like the CRA fund and other funds that the town has. We include all reserves that our analysis finds is available for operating expenses. The specific funds that will be included will vary by credit, although almost all will include at least the general fund unassigned plus assigned fund balance. Jim Bowes only wants to look at one number, the unassigned. He doesn't want to look at the assigned fund balance because he hasn't read it. He doesn't know, or else he's misrepresenting. I'm not sure. But Moody's goes on to say in another page, we include both the restricted and unrestricted fund balance unless there's a reason to believe the restricted fund portions are not usable for operating expenses. And here they clearly are. They're specifically assigned to cover operating expenses. So the reason that the mayor gave for his veto, bogus in my view. You don't agree, I'm sure.
I don't. So
Take it away.
I haven't heard of that reading or that explanation until we're recording this. No, so they include it. They look at both numbers, but they're both numbers for a reason on your pie chart in the same way I'm sure they are on their analysis. But that doesn't mean they're not weighed differently. And to me, if I was working for Moody and factoring things, the unassigned is different than the assigned. And if there's an increased reliance on the assigned, you've got to weigh then the odds of where the chances are that you're going to blow through that or spend it. How much are you going to spend? Now, sure, they probably go back and say, well, Wallingford typically, either runs $1 million surplus or $1 million deficit and takes from that fund, whatever. I'm sure those are all factors too. They didn't say that either, but I think they're weighted. They are weighted differently. And if they're not, then I'd be shocked. I would be really shocked. I think unassigned is different and weighs more than assigned. When we say assigned, I mean the assigned money towards, covering the expenses of the budget to reduce the tax burden.
Well, next time this comes up and we have to get into what Moody's has said, we'll put you on as the expert witness to read Moody's mind. We'll ignore the written words, which I just read, and we'll focus on your interpretation.
I heard the same thing you read, and I heard it as it was written. I don't know why you're so confused. That's why I'm like, yeah.
Good job. I like that spin. I really do. Let's change the subject.
It's just the facts. Just the facts.
You're a good man.
I mean, I've consistently been worried about that fund, and I've stated so. And the year that it was 7.4, now it's 7.9, and it was supposed to be 6.4. But I was I was concerned and upset it was 7.4 back then, and we ended up spending some of it. But um, I think I was already there. So maybe just because I'm already there of that mindset, that's why I hear it differently than you.
Look, Dickinson loyalist, I'm going to change the subject on that.
He would love to have me a loyalist on his side. I may end up there a lot, but it's certainly out of no.
I just read what Moody
More
says, and you
loyalty.
guys do what you want with it.
All the people at home, you're like, Mike, why do you even hear it that way? That's not what it sounds like.
I want to talk to you about something much more somber,
Okay.
much more serious, much sadder. And it has to do with the death, the passing of electric school buses in Wallingford.
Yeah.
We talked on the show previously, I think at least a couple of times, about the possibility of our transportation provider taking advantage of a grant and maybe collecting, buying for the Wallingford fleet some electric school buses.
Yeah.
I think there was probably some hope in the Board of Education that could happen, but it's over. In a letter dated May 4, the bus company said, after much discussion and careful consideration, please dry your eyes. After much discussion and careful consideration, this is like the reject letter from your first choice college.
Right.
This is what that looks like. Or
is it the reject letter from our first choice college, or like the number 4 college that wanted to be our first choice? But yeah.
After much discussion and careful consideration, or from your prom date, the girl you wanted to take to the prom, she sends you a letter, instead. We have concluded that at this time, Durham is unable to pursue an electric vehicle school bus solution on behalf of the Wallingford School District. This decision is based solely on current challenging economic circumstances, including the impact of COVID and reduction of routes and services. And so that ends it. Sad.
Sorry, you didn't want to pay for it, so we're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it for the reasons you weren't going to do it.
Which was, well, my understanding of the story, it's not the official version, but my understanding of the story is when the Board of Ed was approached and by the school transportation provider, and the possibility that maybe the Board of Ed would pay a little more to have electric school buses, that was entertained briefly until it got into the mayor's office. And to his credit, the mayor said, no, we're not doing that. We're not modifying the contract. We're not paying any more than we're currently obligated to pay. And although the investigation went on and the due diligence went on to see if electric school buses were a possibility, I think that was the turning point and the death knell. And now it's over. Your final thoughts on that final topic, and then we'll.
Yeah, no, I think it would probably be wise for the people at the Durham Bus Services to put a room together and figure out there. I'm sure there is a way to transition profitably to electric buses, slowly moving the dependency off gas. But what we pay them for fuel is a pass through, basically. So this would move more money over towards Durham for electric buses. We pay less for fuel. Maybe they pocket a little more now. Then we get paid the money for the fuel because we provide electricity. If they looked at all that stuff, that could be cool. But other than that, like for the sake of it, like I want a Tesla. I think they're fun and they're cool and they're good for the environment. And we have cheap electrical rates in Wallingford, but they're expensive. So until they're cheaper or I end up making a lot more money, that's not going to happen.
They're going to have to replace some of their buses anyway. I checked the assessor's list of the school buses garaged in Wallingford.
Yeah.
Some of them are getting quite old, so they're going to have to do something about it. I also read an article recently about are electric vehicles really that environmental friendly? And by the way, I'm an environmental guy. I mean, I'm in favor of carbon taxes and everything else to reduce, to reduce the emissions. But these batteries that these vehicles take are not very environmental friendly. They take a lot of minerals and mining and a lot of energy to get these batteries going. I have not read, I'm not saying it's not out there, but I haven't read sort of a net carbon footprint on electric vehicles taken into consideration the manufacturing process, especially of the batteries.
Oh, no, nobody does that. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the kind of investigation I'd like to see. And I'm an environmental type guy, at least I think I am. Hey, let's wrap it up. We have run out of time. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in to the Citizen Mike Show. I want to thank Susan Huizenga at WPAA for putting it up on their station. on Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Hey, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Tom, thanks for coming back. Watch the show on YouTube, folks. Tom, you watch it too. See how you did. We should
Watch
have
it on YouTube.
Wednesday night or maybe Thursday midday. And good night, everyone. Thanks again, Tom. See you soon.